My 25 male best friend lost a parent a year and a half ago, which led him to a mental health crisis. Our friend group has been picking up the pieces ever since. He's doing much better now that he's in therapy, but he's gone through it. What has complicated matters worse is my fiance, 25 female. We've been together only for 2 years, and I proposed a month before Nolan's parents' death. I love her, but she is the definition of a busybody sometimes. My best friend is a very private person. She knows something happened to him, but she doesn't know the details of what that something is. She probably never will. But because she's around my friends and me often, as we live in the same house, she hears bits and pieces of the story and presses for more information. I try to circumvent this as best as possible. For example, I step out of the room for specific phone conversations, but still it's hard to limit the discussion about it sometimes. So if we must bring it up and she's around in person, we'll refer to the Nolan situation without giving specifics. Nolan will also stop by my place at night when he can't sleep. This doesn't happen all that often, twice a month. He'll text me or call me saying he's outside and I'll sit with him and maybe smoke a little bit, then he'll head home. I'll wait up until I know he got home safely, then I'll go back to sleep. My fiance hates this. She claims the phone calls always wake her up. They don't. She just sometimes happens to wake up for the bathroom while I'm outside, and that my not being in bed is alarming. This brings us to last night. Nolan stopped by, and when I returned inside, my fiance said she was putting a stop to it. She said all this sneaking around is making her paranoid. She doesn't feel like she can properly trust me or be a part of my friend group without knowing the details, and that Nolan needs to stop relying on me so much. I told her that no matter whether we were married, dating or whatever, she would never have any ownership over my friend's trauma and that she would never be able to order me around regarding it. I also said her comfort was less important than someone's actual physical well-being. She was obviously hurt by this and went to stay with her mom after work today. It's almost 1 AM and she's not back. Am I the idiot? Edit. She knows Nolan lost a parent. She doesn't know the aftermath beyond the statement he had a mental health crisis. Yes, he has specifically asked me not to tell her. We do not talk about this constantly in front of her. I'm giving examples over the past year and a half. Also, Nolan sees a therapist. He comes to my place to hang out. Here's the thing, man. Your fiancé is going to be the most important person in your life. Your partner. And while it's true that it's up to Nolan what he shares and whom he shares it with, it does sound like you're cutting her out of the situation to a problematic degree. You are not your friend's therapist. If my SO was frequently getting up late at night because a non-mutual friend needed the equivalent of being tucked into bed multiple times a month, it would eventually begin to bother me if I was not in the loop. Yep, and apparently, Nolan hasn't even let her get to know him through small talk or anything. She's been very excluded from anything to do with Nolan. So from her perspective, you meet this guy and you two really hit it off, true love at first sight and all that crap. You're only together for 5 months and he proposes. Whoa, maybe a little scary to jump into it like this, but you love him so you're excited. But then a month later you hear that one of Nolan's parents died. Now, whenever you walk into the room when the group is over, they all shush each other and talk in hushed voices. The only thing you ever really hear is them vaguely referring to the Nolan situation. Another year and a half go by and it's all still happening. You feel like you're going crazy. No one will tell you what the heck is happening or why your fiancé keeps sneaking out in the middle of the night. I have anxiety just writing that out. I can't even imagine how anxiety-inducing it's been to live through that. Wow, OP, you are the idiot. Yeah, stop being a busybody and stop trying to stick your nose in a situation that's only affected your life and relationship for the last 18 months or so. The nerve of some people. Nolan is emotionally manipulating you at this point. There is a major difference between being intensely private and using this event as emotional leverage to get your group to drop whatever for him. Nothing bonds people like trauma, but your whole friend group takes this to an extreme. OP, I think you need to evaluate whether your friend is emotionally needy or doesn't want to lose you to your fiancé. Nolan is someone I care of, but fiancé is a busybody. Yikes. Is it just me or is OP way more invested in Nolan than his fiancé? Is OP more in love with Nolan than her? If so, he needs to let it go for her own benefit. She should not be the second fiddle in his heart. My fiancé and I are moving in together. We decided that she should be the one to move in with us since my home is bigger and in a better area. I have a younger teen daughter and she has 2 daughters. One is the same age as my daughter and one is a mid-teen. I live in a 2-bedroom home. A few years ago I finished the basement and added a bathroom to it and gave it to my daughter. The other room is my office, which I was planning to turn into a bedroom for my fiance's daughters. It's a small room, but it's nice, and it can fit 2 beds, especially if we add a bunk bed instead of 2 twin beds. It doesn't have a bathroom, but we don't live in a palace, so it's pretty close to the bathroom. My fiance and I have been talking about the room situation, and we don't seem to be able to agree on anything. She thinks I'm an idiot for planning to let her daughter have the entire basement for herself and force hers to share a small room. This has been my daughter's room for years. She decorated it with her mom, so she shouldn't have to give it up. Obviously her family is on her side. So am I the idiot for not asking my child to give up her room? Hard stop and do not go further with this relationship. We know you will, of course, because you don't see that this is the beginning of a lifelong problem. The only way for this relationship to survive is to move into a different house with equivalent bedrooms for the kids. What would that be? Not sure, but I know it isn't your current setup. You are in a complete no-win situation, and you'll be the idiot either to your daughter or your fiancé and her children. You are the idiot for moving 5 people into a 2-bedroom home with a basement. The fact you're even having this argument with your SO proves it's not suitable for you all. This was your daughter's home first. Making her share or give up her basement room will cause her to resent all of you, and it would be vastly unfair to displace her in her own home. However, squeezing 2 teenage girls into a tiny room is also an idiot move. Your home is not suitable for all. Although, question, is your bedroom bigger than the smaller room? If so, give up your room to the incoming 2 teenagers, and you and your SO share the smaller room. If not, get a bigger home. Well, he thinks bunk beds for teens is a good idea. You are the idiot. You think your daughter shouldn't have to give up her room, but her daughters are already giving up their rooms and house. You're all becoming one family and none of the children are choosing this. Therefore, forcing them into this will not create a positive relationship between them. I'm the single mom of 3 kids. Holly, teen female, Trevor, tween male, and Cassie, pre-tween female. I have little to no support. Their father left after Cassie was born and there was no family nearby, etc. I have 2 sitters that I can call on as needed, and I use them before I'd ever ask Polly for help. I don't want her to miss out on her teenage years. Before this incident, I only ever asked her to babysit once because I had no one else, and I paid her $15 an hour, at the time above minimum wage. This past Saturday, Polly was due to hang out with some friends. For a couple of days, Trevor was ill. He spiked a high fever that day and I had to take him to the ER. I asked Polly to watch Cassie as the sitters weren't responding. I apologised that she'd have to miss out on time with friends, but I said I'd pay her, and she could even have her friends over at our place. Polly pitched a fit and asked why I couldn't send Cassie to the neighbours. We don't know them. They moved in last month and outside waving when we get our mail. I don't have a relationship with them. Polly was irritated. I told her I'd pay her $18 an hour and that I had to go. I take Trevor to the ER and we must wait a bit. Polly kept asking if the sitters had responded, and they hadn't. Eventually it was our time to be seen, so I told Polly I'd be out of reach for a bit. It turns out Trevor had a bad case of RSV, and due to pre-existing health problems, had to be admitted for the night. I was terrified. When I called Polly to update her, I heard people talking in the background and said, "Oh, you had your friends come over?" She told me no, she dropped Cassie at the neighbours and went out. I was furious. I told her to go home and get her sister. I then asked for the neighbour's number, but she didn't even ask for it. Which I get teenage logic, but still. At first, Polly refused until I told her she was grounded. I made her FaceTime me when she got home to show that Cassie was with her. Eventually, my mom could make the 2-hour drive down to stay with the girls, but I told her not to let Polly leave the house. The next day, Trevor and I were able to go home. I lectured Polly about what she did and grounded her for 2 weeks. She got mad at me and said that I couldn't expect her to drop her plans. I pointed out I never do, but this was an emergency and her brother was sick. She told me that's not her problem. She's also mad because I won't pay her. I apologised profusely to the neighbour, who said it was okay and that he would have called me, but Polly didn't leave my number either. Polly said I overreacted. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. This was an extreme emergency situation, and Polly acted selfishly and irresponsibly. As an added bonus, she left a young child with strangers and exposed them to an unknown illness. Also, considering other folks around her were sick, it should be common courtesy and sense not to want to expose her friends as well. She's old enough to comprehend how terrible and dangerous her actions were, but instead doubled down on being petulant. Not my kid, but Polly earned a hefty punishment and consequences. Exactly, I think 2 weeks is not enough of a punishment for this. I'd be livid that my oldest could not be trusted to adequately care for her siblings for such a short amount of time in an emergency. I have no idea what they would need to do, probably do community service in a related area for a while. This might be a good idea. Part of her punishment should be watching documentaries on the dangers of trusting strangers or people you don't know with your kids, especially ones that center around teenagers who dump their siblings off on someone like that. Hopefully, it would open her eyes to the dangers she possibly put her sister in. She doesn't watch true crime stories or she would never have done that. She was irresponsible and deserved to be grounded. I feel for you and I hope you don't have to go through this again. My 45 male stepdaughter, nearly adult, is a phenomenal cook. I'm talking homemade pasta sauces, scratch baking, heck, and sometimes imported seasonings, but she only does it for herself. She's been a fine cook when I ask her to do it for us, but only on rare occasions. When we're all busy and need to do DIY dinner nights and can't all sit around the table, you can smell her homemade garlic pesto or vegan teriyaki stir-fry all over the house, and it gets irritating. We get her ingredients that she uses up quickly and never makes meals to share, and I'm getting annoyed. So I asked her earlier tonight if she would start making dinner for us all more frequently. I didn't say every night, and she got annoyed and mouthy with me, saying she's drowning in schoolwork, her internship, and her commissions, a very talented artist, and can't babysit us because you never learned to cook. She claims her sparse dinner preparations are a treat when she's up to the task and feeling nice, and she can't be expected to come up with something new and fresh every night. She's doing it for herself anyway, so why not for the rest of us? So I told her to just do the dishes and go to her room. She did the dishes and stomped off and hasn't come out since. And my wife thinks I'm the idiot here, but I think I'm in line. She lives under my roof, doesn't pay rent, and is already cooking every night for herself anyway. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. Why is a minor child cooking every night for herself in the first place? She does have a full-time job, school, plus a part-time job and an internship, and she's a child. Get in the kitchen, dude. She's 17, you're 45. You should be embarrassed. And he has the nerve to say she lives under my roof rent-free and I buy her groceries. Yeah, dude, she's a child. That's how things usually work. Her mom is legally responsible for providing housing, food, etc. for her. You and your wife should take some cooking classes. She clearly does it to fend for herself and has a creative project that satisfies her. You are entitled and rude, and she is absolutely right. It's not her fault you didn't learn basic cooking. Pesto and teriyaki are basic foods that are less than 10 steps. The fact that you would even think she's living there rent-free is sick. You should never have married a person with kids if you thought those children would have to pay you to have a home. You're a grown damn adult. If you cannot make yourself decent sustenance, that is not this young girl's problem. I have a son, 20, who is studying engineering in college and has recently found the study material a little difficult and needs to work on it. A few days ago, he came home from the dorm from the weekend to cool off a little bit. On Sunday, my wife went into my son's room, and I could tell he was a little agitated, trying to work on something he didn't fully understand. My wife tried to console and reason with him, but he raised his voice at her, telling her to leave him alone. Then my wife told him to pack his bags and that he was returning to the dorm, that he couldn't be here if he was going to act like this. My son tried to talk over her to shut her up, but my wife wasn't having any of it, telling him that she wouldn't relent until he either calmed down or packed his stuff and that she would not be held emotionally hostage by my son. Then he started to call her an overbearing witch and all sorts of other nasty names, to which I had to bark at my son and tell him stop right now and that he does not call my wife names or there will be problems if he doesn't de-escalate. She's just doing what she thinks is in his best interest, and he finally relented. Later that evening, my son commented how he chatted with his friends who told them that my wife was in the wrong. Still, I had to say that they don't feed us, they don't pay our bills, they don't know us, and he needs to stop consulting his echo chambers and learn to forgive his mother and forget this. He must respect her for getting him where he is today because she's his mother. He tried to tell me that respect is a two-way street, But I said by that logic, should his mum call him the nasty names that he does to her? Should we call his grandma and tell her to cut his college funding? And what should he do if he finds someone annoying and getting on his nerves? Ignore it, to which he responded with, BS, control your damn wife, and I had to disengage. Since my son went back a couple of nights ago, he's refused to answer our calls and only responds to our texts asking us to apologise. No ifs, ands or buts. He's told his grandma about us threatening to tell her to pull his funding, which she proceeded to give us an earful over and that she'd pay for it no matter what, and called it really sad if we, his parents, would be less proud of him than she is, by even asking to do such a thing. I can't believe he went and told her about this, but now after what she said, I don't know how to feel about this. You are the idiot. Your wife created this whole problem. It sounds like this is not a one-time incident, but something your son has been dealing with his entire life. You were the one who dragged in Grandma's financing of the school, so she had every right to be there. You have two choices. Either apologise or work with your wife to resolve the issue, or accept that you will be no contact with your son for the rest of his life. Came into his room stands out to me. Didn't ask, didn't knock, just let herself in and forced your son to listen and engage even though he wanted to do something else. I have a nagging feeling you need to include info. Does your wife constantly bother your son when he's trying to study? What did she need in his room? What was she reasoning with him about? Is this his birth mother? So the question I have is, why does he have to respect her when she isn't obligated to respect him? You are leaving information out to make you and your wife look good and your son look bad. I suspect Opie and his wife are also the kind of people who think respect means obedience and don't consider that respect is something their kids are also entitled to. I also got the vibe that it's a stepmom that joined the family later in the son's life and the father was trying to force a mother-son relationship, but none of that was specified. Your wife doesn't respect boundaries and her help wasn't appreciated. Her help was overbearing and it looks like she finally pushed him to his limit.